Emotions are the same. Love is the same. Hate is the same. If you're doing a Western, or you're doing a modern city drama, or you're doing a futuristic picture or a period picture, the composer's job in a film is really to delve in the areas of the emotional aspect of the film.
Jerry Goldsmith es uno de los más talentosos, influyentes y populares de todos los compositores cinematográficos. Desde muy temprano se dedicó a ser músico para el cine, carrera que se inicia en 1957, y ha escrito cerca de 200 partituras hasta su muerte en el año 2004. Para Goldsmith, una buena partitura necesita dos elementos. Debe tener compatibilidad y calidad musical. Es difícil llegar a un acuerdo con el segundo punto, y con respecto al primero, en su opinión, el compositor debe llevar a cabo su trabajo sin llegar a dominar la escena. A su muerte, Jerry Goldsmith deja un legado importante y uno de los referentes más queridos y respetados. Sus partituras para Star Trek, por ejemplo, son una realización de gran calidad mediante una compleja estructura y por su intenso poder dramático. Su música transformó una fantasía cinematográfica en un drama musical. Acompáñenme en este viaje para conocer a una de las figuras más relevantes en la historia de la música para el cine. Los invito a escuchar la obra de Jerry Goldsmith.
Here she goes.
You get it?
I don't know. I wish I could have seen their faces.
The right picture can win or lose a war.
You're gonna want to see this.
Now, this picture, people went crazy over it. Country was tired of war. One photo, almost all on its own, turned that around.
We're clear! Go, 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 go! Go, go, go!
Any theories why they ain't shooting? Maybe they're all dead.
What do you think, Doc? You think they're all dead?
Captain Severance asked me who else is in that picture.
You want to ship us back to the States?
Here are the heroes of Iwo Jima.
Everybody wants to meet you guys. Just some simple things we want you to say. Mostly, buy bonds.
You know, I think this whole damn thing is a farce.
If we don't raise $14 billion, this war's over by the end of the month.
The real heroes are dead on that island.
Knowing he was with you that day and seeing him in that photograph, I don't know why it makes me feel better, but it does. It's so silly.
No, it's not. I can't take them calling me a hero. Some of the things I saw done, they weren't things to be proud of.
Jerry Goldsmith, certainly the privilege of working with that guy. I mean, a master, probably in the top 3 in the world as a composer. And again, a gentleman and collaborative and helpful and understands Star Trek and has helped us through the years.
Jerry was probably one of the most influential composers that I've listened to and studied and had the good fortune of meeting and becoming associates and friends with.
The only contact that I've had with Jerry Goldsmith, aside from meeting him, is having the privilege of sitting and watching him work on Star Trek scores. And it's very, very beautiful to watch.
more often than not, when there was a great piece or a great cue that Jerry had written, the orchestra would always, you know, we'd finish the cue and they'd be quiet for a second, and then they'd start to applaud. And it happened a lot, because they knew the music was really good. I mean, he was a real composer.
Working in the designs and drawing, I always listen to a lot of Jerry Goldsmith music. He's kind of the inspiration behind, and the silent voice behind a lot of my drawings. His music just has always been something I've been a fan of since I was very young.
I used to listen to his soundtrack for Alien. These were when albums were out, and I would just put the album on and just listen to the whole album from beginning to end. They don't do soundtracks like that anymore.
Goldsmith's Star Trek theme, the Star Trek the Motion Picture and Star Trek the Next Generation theme, is one of the signatures of Star Trek. And I think the power of Goldsmith's work is that he distilled the excitement and the adventure of Star Trek into that one piece.
It was such a joy to work with him. He was such a fun and easygoing guy to work with. And we would always sit down with him, the director and myself, would sit down and go through the movie with him. And it was just such a relaxed and pleasant time.
Are we all set back here? Yes. Let me try it again. I'm hearing electronics. I particularly need the input of the director, the producer, or both. Because, you know, if we're all working in concert, then it's going to be a lot better. I mean, I may have a different take on a scene than they have, and we'll at least discuss it. And sometimes the music will open up an area that they never even thought of. But I think that we have to be in concert with each other.
Finally, you would get to the point where you'd walk into the big recording studios here at Paramount. You'd sit in the control room with 15 people, and Jerry would be in there with a 100-piece orchestra and be scoring to picture. And it was, to me, probably the most fun thing that was ever done during the course of making a motion picture, because there's something so grand and something so wonderful about hearing a big piece of orchestral music being put to picture.
Yeah, I think a film composer is truly a chameleon, though, because we do change styles so often. And we can express the same, you know, you can express the love if you're using jazz, you're using rock and roll, you're using symphonic music, you're using electronic music, you're using music concrete or whatever. There's many different ways you can express the same emotion, and I think the composer will find what works the best for him and the film vehicle. I think that's the true test of a good composer. First of all, I don't like the term film composer. I like the term composer. We are composers, and we happen to work and make the majority of our living from writing music for films.
Jerry absolutely defined what music of another world or another time might be.
Ortikels, Kaus Frammeler, Jau Kaus, say I pa Majin. Sha Kostri Kort Stable, by Helfröll Aktapel, Tof Kolinar.
Kolinar, Efrei Exerkel, Tof Horte Poschel.
Zuktol go a Korshisbuch, Ipopra Kasse, Seth Tibik, Tof Sosel Ojika.
Thrusters ahead, Mr. Sir. take us out.
We wouldn't know what Klingon's heritage would sound like without Jerry's wild sonorities of Klingon music and percussive qualities.
It's not difficult for me to really write the music. It comes very quickly. And I always feel that I've always felt Star Trek as being very romantic, very lyrical. And which basically, when one boils down the whole premise of it, that's what it is.
What Star Trek music is about, and being a part of that franchise, to be able to look to him as the master, and then to be able to call him up and say, "Hey, Jerry, how did you deal with an alien culture who nobody knows anything about?" And he would answer in a slightly wry, comical way, "Well, you know, just think about how you'd be if you were in another place and what kind of music you'd like to hear, and just do it. They might not like it, but just do it anyway and see what happens."
I've heard so many people and critics and people say, "Well, the music's leading the audience emotionally. It's not right, you know. You're manipulating us." Well, what the hell is it? That's what we're here to do. Good film is, you know, you're manipulating your audience.
One of the huge differences in the music between Star Trek and, say, Star Wars is that the use of music in Star Trek is much more cerebral, and it relies on the listener and the observer to make their own decisions as to what the intent of the scene was. And Jerry was a genius at not getting in the way of that element, not foreshadowing who was good and who was bad.
In Star Trek the Motion Picture, he wrote over 50% of the film with nothing on the screen but a sign that said, "Scene missing." He composed music for a film that didn't exist. And he didn't see it until the film was done.
The action things are always secondary to me in the whole Star Trek. So it's always been the emotional and the depth of the characters. To me, there's always a nobility about them. I guess that's...
El fin de la composición es brindar información adicional al diálogo o la escena que aparece en pantalla. Por ejemplo, si estuviéramos escribiendo una ópera, necesitaríamos un tema tan profundo que ninguna otra forma de expresión fuese posible. Lo mismo ocurre con la partitura para una película, donde el compositor debe esperar por esos momentos precisos en que la escena sea tan especial que la única que pueda expresar lo que ocurre sea la música. Con esto, la música proporcionará el elemento extra necesario y si se realiza bien, elevará la escena.
It's so exciting. You hear music come alive with an orchestra, a big orchestra on a scoring stage, and everybody gets thrilled and excited and all that. And Bob was mildly, and he smiled. And
I listened to the first couple of pieces, and it didn't seem quite right to me. It seemed like I got visions of sailing ships somehow.
The scene of the flying up to the Enterprise was a big bombastic piece, and we all thought it was so wonderful. And finished the sessions, and I'm patting myself on the back, and everybody's patting, it's great and all that. And
Bob grabbed me, pulled me out in the hallway. We walked down the hall. I said, well, what do you think? And I could never lie to Bob. I couldn't get away with it even if I wanted to. I mean, it's impossible. So I said, well, I think it sounds like, sailing ships. And he says, well, I think it sounds like Conestoga wagons. What do we do?
And he couldn't really articulate what was bothering him. He instinctually knew what was bothering him, but he couldn't say what was bothering him. So I said, we got to do that all over again. And so I was crushed.
Those were pretty frightening moments. Those are the type of moments where if you were going to start having a breakdown, that's when you were going to start doing it.
I said, well, what's bothering you? And he finally said, there's no theme. And I started thinking, theme? Oh, there's a love theme. I'd written a love theme. But I mean, there was no Star Trek theme. And I said, oh.
Yeah, when we took a little break and Jerry went away, and while we were doing some more work on the film, and then he came back with his revised score.
He'd come over to the house and he had a bad day of the special effects, and he says, I've had a really bad day today. He says, nothing's working right. I hope you got good news for me. So I remember the head of the music department at Fox, at Paramount, was there then. And we had rehearsed this, and I had two pianos in the living room, and we played it for him on the two pianos. He said, that's it. It was like, why didn't you come up with that in the first place?
Para Jerry Goldsmith, lo importante de la música de cine es que tuviera vida propia más allá de la película a la que acompaña. Esto posibilita que se celebren conciertos a los que la gente va no porque sea el trabajo de Jerry Goldsmith, sino porque suena la música de Chinatown o Patton. La música de cine está permitiendo así que aumente el número de asistentes a las salas de concierto. El compositor manifestó que su mayor deseo era que el público evolucione, ya que si estos lo hacen, los directores, escritores y compositores están obligados a hacerlo de igual modo.
The famous Star Trek theme that we all know and love was, of course, the one that I know from, that was developed from the Star Trek movie that became the theme to The Next Generation, which I worked on. And it was one of those themes that you would hear that harp gliss at the beginning of, and you just run to the television to hear, you knew what was coming up. It was such a signature piece. The theme used when the Enterprise was seen, it just established, okay, that's Star Trek. The fact that it was combined with the fanfare from the original series that his good friend and orchestrator, Alexander Courage, composed, that he brilliantly combined those themes in the Next Generation television series. It was just a great opportunity to listen to good music.
I was blown away when we realized that we could start working with Jerry. I know when Next Generation was first created, Gene and Bob Justman and I all agreed that the best theme for us to use would be the theme that Jerry had written for Star Trek I, the motion picture.
These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds.
There was some question about using the theme from the original Star Trek series, which I found was a little too 60s. And I, being the youngest of the sort of little group of producers on the show, I was very big on pushing for the theme from the first movie. And Gene and Bob agreed, and it was great that we didn't have any of that going on, because that was, I think, something that had passed its time. And then when it was time for Voyager, we got Jerry to come and create a theme for us, and he won an Emmy with that.
He did do the theme to Voyager, and again, interestingly enough, a much more gentle treatment of musical themes. And I've often wondered whether, did they come to him and say, look, we have a woman captain, should the music be different to represent this or whatever? But in terms of it being non-angular like some of the other themes were, it was more broad-stroked melody, more along the lines of what he might have done for Basic Instinct, where the melodic intervals were further apart. It wasn't as complicated of a piece of music, and it stated a lot more about what that show was about.
Engage.
To me, it's the best Star Trek film I've done, and I felt that when I read the script. I loved the script so much, and I was probably the most moved by this than any. But I think basically, I see this. I mean, it's a wonderful chance to sort of let it all loose. This sort of broad canvas and romantic canvas that's hidden inside of me, and I feel that that's one of the things I love about these pictures. It's a great sort of, in a way, sort of cathartic for me, that I can express these kind of emotions that I don't get a chance to do in a lot of other films.
5 pairs.
As we were writing this film, rather than thinking of what kind of music I was interested in, or we were interested in, it just became more and more obvious that it would be great to get Jerry Goldsmith to do it. Jerry's sort of locked in as part of the Star Trek lexicon, especially in terms of the specific composers.
We were very close, you and I. You can still hear our song.
Jerry did not have enough time to do the score for this film. That's why I'm on the film. And rather than bringing in another composer who wasn't as familiar with, this was a situation that I have a specific area that he felt would work well in this film for the Borg and the darker, action-oriented music.
Ready, phasers!
Okay. Hey, we're lucky. All I have to do is your big one after lunch and that one I wrote this morning.
Okay, well, cool. It could take a few hours.
Your way, it'll take the whole day.
Yeah, I like this. I like this.
Watching the two of them together on the stage was great, because there was a proud dad, but of course he wasn't going to gush all over him in front of people, but he couldn't stop smiling.
Any composer working with Jerry Goldsmith is a dream. You're working with one of the finest film composers in the history of film, and every day you're learning things constantly. From large approach, the way to approach things in a large way, to subtleties.
We hoped for. He has written a main theme that's noble and strong, a main theme that has a sense of dignity and strength to it that the picture calls for.
The film's terrific. This is the best Star Trek film yet. There's no question. It's really excellent.
And I remember always wondering what it'd be like to do something like watching the motion picture. You have the Enterprise and this grand Jerry Goldsmith score with the Vulcan ship descending out of the clouds. Was the same thing. It was something I'd actually got to work on and do a lot of design work and see the ship come out of the clouds and have the beautiful Goldsmith score play behind it was definitely a high point that I'll always hold dear. And he gave me a sheet of the music from that scene. So that's something that always stands out as kind of the high point of my life and career, is working with the Star Trek world.
The theme that Jerry had written that sort of covered a great deal of the stuff that happened down on Earth during the course of that movie was such a gentle and beautiful theme that it was a heart-wrenching moment, and I think one of the loveliest moments of any of the films.
I would like to say is that I think many people probably were not aware that much of his concert music, which he was concentrating on. I got to know him. He spoke at one of the Society of Composers and Lyricists celebrations that we had, and he spoke a lot about composers' rights, and he was always one to speak up for intellectual property, and that the role of the composer in terms of respect in the industry and how important it was for us all to maintain our integrity.
And I was lucky enough to go to a number of concerts where he would perform medleys of Star Trek music. I went to one at the Hollywood Bowl. I went to one that he did at in Pasadena, and the audiences loved it. And it was, he was just a terrific guy, a lovely, lovely man, and we all miss him a great deal.
And most everyone in the community still feels that he left us way too early, and one of the messages might be for all of us who work under these conditions, that it's probably a good idea to take care of ourselves, our own health, because we don't know how long we're here for. I think Jerry had many more years of creativity, and it's a shame that he left when he did.
That's good. That's great. One take. Once you all note that. I just love doing them. As I said before, it's very cathartic for me. Star Trek is a place where I get rid of all these, express all these emotions that are romantic and heroic and noble emotions that are pent up. A few films allow me to express myself. So it gets all comes out in this picture, in these pictures.
If I was to say Jerry's contribution to film, what you'd have to do is you get his filmography and look at all the films and listen to what he did, and that was his contribution. You can't do any more than that. It's a body of work. It's the man's life. He lived for his music.
Para Jerry Goldsmith, el éxito de la música de una película descansa en los compositores mismos. Si ellos toman su trabajo seriamente y vuelcan lo mejor que tienen de ellos mismos, entonces tal vez podamos persuadir no solamente al público, sino a los realizadores que tener buena música es valioso para una película. El público no es tonto. Si nuestra música sobrevive, lo cual él no tenía duda que así será, lo será porque es buena.